Okay, these are the men of the book of Joshua, Judges, and the first part of First Samuel. You're going to want to skip a line between each, maybe a couple lines for Joshua. Achan is short, and Ehud is short. So is Gideon. Gideon, I might give you some more details. Samson is definitely short, sometimes doesn't make it onto the quiz. And Eli and Samuel are the last of the judges. Again, a judge is a military leader and a religious leader. You can't separate those two things from each other. Joshua is the first judge. He was the assistant to Moses. Moses dies on Mount Nebo after the Israelites spend 40 years wandering through the book of Numbers to get to the promised land. And Joshua takes over and leads the Israelites into the promised land. And it seems like Joshua ruled all 12 tribes. Achan is a minor character who appears in the story of Joshua, and his story is kind of important. After the siege of Jericho, the Israelites go to another city and they lose that battle. And Joshua asks God, or the priests ask God, or they flip the Urim and Thummim, and they decide that somebody has violated the ban. Turns out Achan was somebody who took stuff at Jericho when the Israelites were supposed to destroy everything. Again, there's problems with the ban. It's not what God wants from us, but it's what Joshua thought God wanted. And Achan is singled out and executed, and his family is killed. Horrible story, but the idea behind it is that the Israelites are responsible for each other. And I think it's entirely possible that there were people besides Achan who took things at Jericho as well, and Achan just happened to be the one who got caught. But I'm guessing after what happened to him, it didn't happen again. Ehud is one of those characters in the book of Judges who kind of highlights what a really horrible time period this is. He's known for one thing: he's left handed. He sneaks in to see this king Eglon of Moab and then sticks the dagger into his gut after lying about his reasons for being there and then sneaks out the window. So, some pretty horrible stories. He might not even make it on the next quiz. Gideon, however, is a really important figure. There's a few chapters dedicated to him, and he fits the model of the judge because he is called to get rid of the altar of Baal and kill the um, bull that's at the altar of Baal. He's a religious reformer first, and then Gideon goes and leads a bunch of troops in battle. I'm going to come back to him in just a minute. But Joshua also fit that model. Joshua, before the Israelites go to Jericho, makes sure that the men are all circumcised after 40 years in the desert, and he renews the covenant. So, this idea that the judge's job is to bring the people back to God and then lead them to victory is something that's exemplified in Joshua and in Gideon as well. And Gideon's story has the additional piece where he asks for volunteers. And he says, if you're afraid, go ahead and go home. And thousands of troops leave. And then he looks for the way that they drink water at the river. And he selects those, my understanding is, who are doing it in a dumb way. That's the way a biblical scholar explained it to a bunch of us. That he wants people who are brave, but not necessarily the brightest people, because the whole purpose of Gideon's victory is that a small group of troops, 300 troops in the middle of the night, defeat an entire Midianite army. So the emphasis is on God winning the victory, not Gideon winning the victory. And I'll come back to him in just a minute or two as well. Samson doesn't really exemplify the idea of a judge very well, except for the fact that he's a Nazarite. And his long hair, his symbol of his dedication to God, is what gives him his strength. But really, there's nothing enlightening about him. He's kind of a flawed character. The stories about Samson are funny and entertaining and things, but um, he doesn't really exemplify the idea of a judge being a military leader and a religious leader. The last two on the list, Eli and Samuel, were both priests and both judges. So again, that idea that they're military leaders and religious leaders fits pretty well. And it seems like Eli and Samuel might have ruled all 12 tribes, just as Joshua did. The judges, by and large, seem to have been local leaders. Eli is a priest. Unfortunately, his sons are jerks. They are committing sins in their job as priests, and so Eli's sons die, and Eli dies, and his whole family is wiped out in one quick chapter of the Bible. And Samuel, who's been living with Eli's family, becomes the new judge. And again, he's a priest, so he's a religious leader, and he's a military leader. And after he gets rid of all the idolatry of the Israelites, Samuel leads them to victory. Samuel will be the last of the judges, and it will be Samuel who will anoint the first two kings of Israel. But we'll talk about them next. So, little Lego Bible. There's a genius guy who does scenes from the Bible. This is Ehud killing Eglon, and this is Samson ripping a lion in half with his bare hands. And I want to take this a little bit further. These are military Bibles that apparently one can buy, or used to be able to buy, that have a metal cover. And I used to find that whenever I gave a lesson on the story of Gideon in the Bible, it always seemed like a few days later, the Gideons would appear at the high school and distribute Bibles. And if you've ever been to a hotel or motel room anywhere in the world, if you open up the drawer in the dresser or the nightstand, there is typically a Bible there. And if you open that Bible, it says, placed there by the Gideons. The Gideons is a worldwide organization. They distribute Bibles, and they took their name Gideon from the story of Gideon in the Bible, where he did a big task with just a small number of people. So the idea of the Gideons is it just takes a few people to stock an entire hotel with Bibles or issue a bunch of Bibles to military people, that a small group of people could do a big effort. I kind of like the fact that they had metal covered Bibles because there's apparently lots of legendary stories of people saying, God saved my life. Here's a bullet, dent in my Bible, and it was right over my heart. Which I think if you're going to carry a Bible with you, having many layers of paper sheathed in wood and metal placed over your heart would be a pretty good place to put it if there was a stray bullet headed that direction. It makes me think, though, of the whole idea of superstition, that there's a tendency sometimes for religious people to think about religious objects as being magical, that they're going to save them. And I'm going to skip this video right now, but maybe I'll come back to it about vampires. But that leads me to another big theme in the book of Judges, and that's that the Ark of the Covenant is going with the Israelites, and it symbolizes God's presence with them. And when they come to the Jordan River with Joshua, the priests, again, this guy's kind of a genius, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant step into the river, and the river stops. And then all the Israelites cross, and then the priests step out of the river, and then the river continues flowing. It just so happens that the Jordan River can stop from time to time. It's a very slow river that goes through some canyons, and landslides can stop it. But in the story of Joshua, we begin the story with the Israelites crossing the Jordan River. They then come to Jericho, and they circle around the city for 7 days, and 7 times around on the 7th day, and there's 7 priests with 7 horns carrying the ark. And at the end, they blow the horn, and the walls come tumbling down. So again, Jericho is supposed to symbolize this idea that God is carrying out the victory, not the Israelites. However, there's a really, really important story where Eli's sons are jerks. They're priests, and they're abusing their job as priests. And they lose a battle and decide, let's take the Ark of the Covenant out into battle with us, and we will then have a victory. Well, it turns out that's not what happens. They take the Ark out into battle. Eli's sons get killed. Eli dies soon afterwards. Funny/tragic story. And the Ark of the Covenant is actually captured by the Philistines. So it's kind of a story put in there to say that the Ark of the Covenant's not a magic box. If you're not faithful to God, God's not going to protect you. Uh, there then are a few little ark miracles while the Ark of the Covenant is with the Philistines, kind of humorous stories. Um, but again, that idea that religious objects can protect us or they're magical makes me think about vampires. And I'm not a big